So, in this episode, we're going to go over the creation lore according to the ancient Greek religion. I'm going to go through the family tree minus the demigods. I'm not going to get into the human and god relationship dynamics, just specifically from the beginning of the Olympians. And then we're going to go through all the way to Pandora. So, in the very beginning, there was nothing but this void called chaos. And from that void came Gaia, the personification of earth, Eros, the personification of love, Tartarus. And then came Erebus and Nyx, which is the personification of dark and night. We're going to jump right into Gaia, who basically created everything else after this point. She alone gave birth to Uranus, which became the sky or heavens. Gaia and Uranus gave birth to Hecatoncres, the Titans, and the Cyclopses. The Hecatoncres were giant 100-hand or 100-armed beings, and they had extraordinary strength. Uranus hated his kids. I'm pretty sure it was more based on the fear of them overthrowing him, because at this point, Gaia and himself were the leaders of this new world. So he ended up trapping them in Gaia's womb and wouldn't let them out. And Gaia was really upset about this. So she tried to convince the Titans to stand up to Uranus. And the only Titan that stood up was Cronus. Little bit of a trigger warning. So the way that Cronus ended up beating his father and leading the new world was he waited until Uranus laid with Gaia at night, and using a sickle stone, which is a really sharp, serrated, it's almost like a blade, and he used that to castrate him, and he threw the severed genitals into the ocean. From the blood of Uranus came the giants and the ash tree nymphs, as well as the Erinyes. And then from his severed genitals came sea foam, and then Aphrodite later emerged from this. And when Uranus fell, he ended up prophesizing that Cronus would meet the same fate as him, as in one of his children was going to overthrow him. So now that we're going to get into the Titanarchy, which is the fall of the Titans. Cronus was very fearful of his children overthrowing him. So another trigger warning, he started eating his kids as soon as they were born. So the children that came from Cronus and Rhea is known as the mother of the gods, were Poseidon, Hades, Hestia, Zeus, Hera, and Demeter. But once she got to the youngest child, which was Zeus, she ended up giving him a stone wrapped in a blanket instead of the baby, and he swallowed it without even realizing, and she was able to hide Zeus away to be raised in secrecy. When he got older, he started coming into his power more. He ended up tricking into drinking this poison, which caused him to throw up his siblings, and since they're gods, it was said that they aged normally. They were all basically grown adults by the time they came out of him. So together they ended up teaming up with the Hecatoncres and the Cyclopses, who he freed from Tartarus, which, little bit reverse, Cronus left his siblings, the Hecatoncres, locked up because I think it was like there's two separate things where he was either disgusted by them or he was also fearful of their strength, because they were the main ones that really helped the Olympians win. The story goes that they were continuously throwing giant rocks and boulders at the Titans until the Olympians were able to get the upper hand and Zeus was able to defeat Cronus. Zeus ended up sentencing the Titans to Tartarus. Zeus really loved the Cyclopses. They fought alongside each other, of course, but the Cyclopses also gifted Zeus his lightning bolts. They're the ones who create the lightning bolts for him. So now we're going to get into the rule of the Olympians and the Olympian gods. Zeus became the lead of this group of gods, and he was appointing the other deities their place. Poseidon, the sea; Hades, the underworld; and Zeus, the heavens. He was over the sky, storms, as well as the other deities. Hestia is the goddess of fire and the hearth. in the home itself. Hera is the goddess of motherhood, women, childbirth, and marriage. Demeter is over agriculture, harvest, as well as fertility. So now we're going to get into Zeus's first wife. Metis was a Titan goddess of wisdom, cunning. She was very strategic, and she's also the mother of Athena. Zeus was fearing living the same life that his father and grandfather before him lived. He somehow tricked Metis into turning into a fly, in which he swallowed her whole. He didn't realize that she was pregnant already at the time, and Zeus started having these wicked migraines and headaches. And one day, from his forehead, Athena just busted out, I guess. I don't know how to even begin to explain that visual, but she ended up just busting out. She was fully grown and full war gear, and she was just ready to go immediately. He didn't really do anything else about it, and nothing else really came of it. He just kind of accepted that, I guess I'm just gonna have kids now and they're gonna be fine. And fun fact, he never really did get overthrown. There was a time where Hera tried to do an uprising against him, but Zeus ended up winning, and it turned out very bad for the people who rebelled against him. But after that, his wife became Hera, which, mind you, she didn't even want to be with him, but he kept pursuing her, so she ended up being with him. So they ended up having Ares, Hephaestus, Hebe, and Lithia, or Ilithia, which is the goddess of childbirth we spoke about in the Apollo episode. And Zeus also had a child with Demeter through an affair, who was Persephone. Just to give a little insight, he was messing around with more than just one sibling. Oceanus and Tethys gave birth to Laptius. And this is important because we're going to get into the story of Prometheus after this. Lepidus, gave birth to Prometheus, Atlas, and Epimetheus. So we're really focusing on Prometheus and Epimetheus. Prometheus, his name literally means foresight, and Epimetheus means afterthought. And this comes into play. So Prometheus was ruled by Zeus to create the humans out of clay, and it said that Athena breathed life into them. There's another version where he gave them life as well, and Prometheus was also the ones who helped man stand upright and gave them fire, which angered Zeus. He did not want the humans to have fire, so Prometheus was punished for it. He had Hephaestus create a woman, the first woman, named Pandora. She was beautiful. She was gifted all of these different talents and items from different gods. So Athena was the one who taught her fine crafts and dressed her. Aphrodite gave her grace and the ability to create a burning desire in men. And Hermes gave her a quote-unquote dog's mind and a thievish character. The dog-minded part, it's not literally she was thinking like a dog, but it emphasized her cunning nature and being untrustworthy. And this was specifically ingrained into her because they gave her a box and told her, do not open the box. This is just for you, hide away, never look at it. Then he sent her to Earth and presented her to Epimetheus, the Titan that we spoke about, which this gets into it being Prometheus's punishment. Prometheus tried to warn his brother and tell him, hey, this looks like a trick. Epimetheus fell in love. He ended up marrying Pandora, and as a lot of people may know, later on, her curiosity did get the best of her, and she opened up the box and unleashed suffering and evil into the world. But at the very bottom of the box was hope. So at least that there's a chance that things could get better. But it kind of goes in to show you that for some reason, it's always a woman's fault, even though technically it's a man's fault because he specifically said, hey, make sure she lies and does untrustworthy shit. And I just think that's pretty interesting that it always kind of falls on a woman why the world suffers. So I'm going to get a little bit into how the ancient Greeks actually practiced their religion. These deities were ingrained into their everyday lives. This wasn't, even the ones that were skeptical of it and didn't believe it, you couldn't really get away from it. They were patron gods of cities. You couldn't walk into Sparta without being met with these statues of the god Ares, the god of war. Athena, Aphrodite, they each ruled over these large cities and they had temples everywhere. And even in the main cities that they dwelled in, there were other gods that were represented as well. So there was really nowhere that you could go where they weren't being presented. It's really a personal relationship with the gods and the goddesses. The rituals include libations and animal sacrifice, and these stories and lore were not written down. This was more of a word of mouth thing, and there were priests and priestesses, but no sacred text that they would go off of. They would mostly just oversee the cult, and they were called cults because there were different sanctions of this all over the place. So in the cities, they would throw these big festivals and competitions in honor of these gods. These gods were anthropomorphic, meaning that they were human-like. They had a man's or a woman's face and body and had human personality traits and qualities to them. So they were very relatable for them back in the day. And it was kind of an easier scapegoat for them to say, oh, we're having a poor harvest because we didn't sacrifice to Demeter or Hecate this year, so that's why things are bad. That was their way of life. So these temples were considered or places that the deities would live permanently or very often visiting. They would honor these places as the deity's home. They did start off as smaller altars, but then it built into a huge thing as time went on. Now, the sacrificing area and the area where they did these rituals wasn't in the actual temple. They did these outside of the temple at an altar base where they would have celebrations, they would do their animal sacrifice. And most of the animals that were sacrificed were often pigs, goats, cows, sheep. I know that we even talked about bulls being sacrificed, but fun fact that I learned, the animals that were being sacrificed were always the same sex as the deity being honored. So if it was a goddess that you're honoring, it would be a female pig or a female sheep. So these larger sanctuaries would have a permanent caretaker who would just tend to things on site, and they would have a living residence there that I don't think it was in the temple. I think they had a separate living quarter, but I also could be wrong because I know that the Oracle of Delphi lived in the temple itself. So I'm sure that there were different things going on with that. So before I send it over to Sarah, I'm going to just give you a list of the 12 main Olympian gods: Zeus, Athena, Apollo, Poseidon, Hermes, Hera, Aphrodite, Demeter, Ares, Artemis, Hades, Hephaestus, and Dionysus. And Dionysus is often interchanged with Hestia, but I often associate Dionysus as one of the deities for this. So now it's Sarah's turn to talk to you about the wonderful world of astrology.
Thank you. So to begin, we have to go over the beginning of the meaning of the word astrology. Astrology is the name given to a series of diverse practices based in the idea that the stars, planets, and other celestial phenomena possess significant and meaning for events on Earth. This practice started in Mesopotamia, and then they brought it to the Hellenistic world of the Greeks and the Romans, which is why their gods and goddesses have similar, if not the same, powers but different names. The Hellenistic practice also took from the Egyptian practice that believed a soul can ascend to the stars. Each religion had a different sense of the word astrology, and there were disputes about what it could do versus what it could not do. Since we're going over the Greek pantheon, we're going to focus on the Greeks' astrology beliefs. So, the wealthy Greeks would hire astrologers to seek their predictions for the present day, week, month, and or year based on that client's zodiac positions. These predictions were seen as extremely accurate since this was a profession and the astronomer had to attend school and get a degree in it. It took years for them to learn and to be able to provide this service. It was seen as super legit. I wish that we still had this type of thought process towards astronomy. So, fun fact is the Greeks only used 5 of the planets because they were only able to see those with the telescopes or with their eyes. So those planets were Mercury, Venus, Mars, Jupiter, and Saturn. And then obviously we had the sun and the moon because they could see that. So since they didn't have like the super cool and fascinating telescopes, the only thing they were really able to do was track the rotation of the Earth, the position of the sun, and the position of the constellations, and the moon as well. They tracked that position, also known as our sun moon rising. So our sun moon rising signs date back to the Greek times, if not earlier, because they just kept track of all of like how we got our days, weeks, months, and years. So the celestial beings were associated with 7 of the gods or goddesses, and each celestial being had a humanized emotion or attribute that would help the astrologer guide the person being read. These were known as the wandering stars or planetes in Greek, since they differ from the fixed stars, also known as our constellations. Honestly, this makes sense since the Earth rotates and we don't always see the same side of the moon or the planets at the same times, but the constellations are a constant. They can be seen at all times, whether that be in the middle of the day or at night, because the stars are there in the day. We are on a spinning raw. So the wandering stars and the god or goddesses that it represents and the characteristics it may give if you are deemed to be ruled by this planet or the astrologer sees it in your chart are going to be as follows. The sun, which is ruled with Helios, which is over your ego, willpower, and sense of self of a person. The moon is with Selene, which is our emotions and intuition. Mercury is with Hermes, which is for communication, intellect, and swift movement. Venus is with Aphrodite, which is for love, beauty, relationships, and harmony. Mars is with Aries, which is super powerful and energetic. Jupiter with Zeus, which is good luck, expansion, optimism, and abundance. And lastly, Saturn with Kronos, which is a figure of authority, limitations, and the passions of time. Along with the planets, they use the constellations to see their horoscope, and that would allow them to seek out what they are asking for. Each constellation has a unique mythological story that goes along with it and why it's named that way. And then I'm going to go in order from houses 1 through 12 of the Greek astrological chart with each story, like kind of like an overview of it. But before we do that, I kind of have to go over Heracles, also known to a lot of people as Hercules, because a few of the signs that we have for the Greek astrological chart are based on some of his labors. So Heracles had to do 12 labors because, trigger warning, sorry, he killed his kids. So what happened was Zeus had an affair, and then Hera cursed Heracles with madness, and that's why he killed his kids. And at the time, King Eurystheus said, complete these labors and you'll be forgiven. So I'm going to name them out, but if you want them in like a solid place, we have them on our social medias. So he had to slay the Nemean lion, slay the Lerinian hydra, capture the Cyrenian hide, capture the Eumanthian boar, clean the Augean stables, slay the Stymphalian birds, capture the Cretan bull, steal the mares of Diomedes, obtain the girdle of Hippolyta, capture the cattle of Geryon, steal the apples of Hesperides, and he had to capture Cerberus. So those are his 12 tasks, and some of the tasks also give us other stories that lead into it, such as Atlas and how he holds the sky up, so on and so forth. So some of these stories are maybe recognizable, some may be brand new to you, or you may have heard some of them here and there, but let's get started. So our first house is Aries, which is ruled by Mars, and this is the story of Jason and the Argonauts. The myth tells the story of Pharaohs and Hel, who were born of Athamas and a Boeotian king. Well, Athamas was the Boeotian king, and the goddess of the clouds, Nephel. Athamas fell in love with a woman named Ino, and Nephel was angry because, he cheated on her, and she caused a drought in her wake. Ino attempted to sacrifice Pharaohs and Hel in order to end the drought, and Nephel prevented this from happening by sending a ram with golden hair to rescue them, and her 2 kids escaped on the winged ram's back. The ram was initially meant to be sacrificed to Mars, but Zeus took it and placed it in the sky in his honor. Second house is Taurus, which is ruled by Venus. This is the myth of Europa, a Titan. Europa was ravished by Zeus, absolutely loved, wanted to be with her, the usual, it's Zeus. He took the form of a white bull at that time, and Taurus is said to represent Zeus in that state. Our third house is Gemini, which is ruled by Mercury, which is the Greek myth of Castor and Pollux. Castor and Pollux were the sons of Leda, an Aetolian princess. Leda was seduced by Zeus after he took the form of a swan. Pollux was immortal, but Castor was not. When Castor was killed, Pollux asked Zeus to reunite him with his fallen brother. Zeus said, sure, why not? And he turned them into the constellation of Gemini, so that way they could be together forever, which I think is really cute. Gemini is also, fun fact, one of the house of the twins. So if you're a twin born under the sign of Gemini, you're kind of strong. Anyway, so our fourth house is Cancer, which is ruled by the moon. Cancer is associated with the crab that Hera sent to fight Heracles. This is his second labor. So what happened was when he was fighting the Hydra, Hera said, "Here, crab, help the Hydra to kill Heracles." And Heracles crushed it under his foot. And so Hera was like, "My crab!" And then she immortalized him into the constellations. The fifth house, which is Leo, is with the sun. And this is similar to this is in Heracles' first labor with the Nemean lion. Trigger warning. He strangled the lion, and after its death, he removed its skin and turned it into armor that he then wore going forward. So then Zeus was like, "Oh, this lion was so brave," and he put him into the sky as a constellation. Our sixth house is Virgo, which is ruled by Mercury, which is Astraea helping her Titan parents, Astraeus and Eos, by being a bearer of lightning during the war between the Titans and the gods. Zeus respected her loyalty and decided to raise her into the heavens, placing her amongst the stars, creating the constellation of Virgo, which is the maiden. Seventh house, Libra, is also associated with our goddess Astraea. When Zeus raised her to the sky and placed her amongst the stars, the scale of justice she was carrying became the constellation of Libra. Eighth house, which is Scorpio, which is ruled by Mars and Pluto. So since a lot of people, which I think is BS to the recess, but a lot of people don't think Pluto is a planet. It's a planet. She's up there. She's living her best life. Let her be. So this constellation is it was also two constellations technically, but hear me out. So it's because of the Greek legend of Orion. Orion was a hunter who arrogantly declared that he can kill all of the animals on Earth, and Artemis, the goddess of the hunt, sent a scorpion to kill him in response to that threat. The arachnid chased Orion until it finally bit him and killed him. The gods raised Orion and the scorpion to the heavens and placed them at opposite sides of the celestial vault. The position was intentional because when the constellation Scorpio rises over the horizon, the constellation Orion hides, fleeing from the animal that caused his death. And I think it's really funny and super poetic. Our ninth house, which is Sagittarius, which is Jupiter. This is associated with the centaur Chiron. Chiron was intelligent, wise, and good-natured. Unlike most of the centaurs, he lived in a cave on Mount Pelion in Thessaly. He was just a really great educator and a tutor of the several most prominent heroes in Greek mythology, such as Achilles, Asclepius, Jason, Aristeo, and Actaeon. So Mickey mentioned Zeus being one of the last two. Well, he actually was the last one, and he got his dad was given a rock, and then he was hidden in the mountains. But Amalthea is a woman who took the form of a goat, and she's the one that raised Zeus after Rhea hid him in the mountains, and she helped protect him from his father. So when Zeus became an adult, and he fought the Titans, he wore goatskin armor to honor her. So she's kind of like a second mom to Zeus, which is like super cute, and I love that. And he's like, "Here you go, here's a space in the sky." So our 11th house is Aquarius, which was Saturn, but is now Uranus. The constellation of Aquarius is associated with Ganymede, which is considered the most beautiful mortal man. Zeus kidnapped him and took him to Mount Olympus to make him a cupbearer, aka the water bearer. Kidnapping isn't good, let's not do that. Our 12th house, which is Pisces, which is ruled by Neptune and Jupiter. So Typhoon, which is a giant water serpent, was one of the most fearsome titans during the war between the Titans and the gods. Many gods took an animal form in attempt to flee his wrath. Eros and Aphrodite fled in the form of fish and were subsequently caught by a fisherman, which made them turn into not made them, but Pisces came from that story. So astrology was huge during these times, and it still is, even though it's kind of westernized, because it's the closest that people could come to seeing the future, and if something they will do will become fruitful. Personally, I love to use astrology, but there's also a sense of you need to be careful because not everything is going to go the way that you think it is, because it's all up to how you interpret the signs and what you are given. So please make sure that you go through an astrology journey with a clear and open mind, and don't be upset with yourself if you think or you read that something is going to happen and then it doesn't, because we also have to remember that we live in reality. There are things that can be interpreted certain ways by different people. So now we're going to get into our tarot and crystal of the week.
So for the tarot pool for this episode, I got the moon. And right side up meaning for the moon is clarity, overcoming obstacles, you're uncovering truths and illusions. So maybe if someone was deceiving you, you're starting to realize that, or people's ulterior motives that they may have. The overall themes of this card is focusing on your intuition, your emotions, creative side, any confusion, and spiritual growth. So reversed, we could look at this as either you are beginning to find clarity, because this isn't really reversed. The moon isn't really a negative, quote unquote, card, but I know sometimes when people pull reversals, they get a little nervous about it. But overall, it's just seeking clarity. And maybe you're being faced with some obstacles, but you have to think with the moon represents our subconscious and our thoughts and feelings and our higher self, essentially. So it's mainly just discovering who you are. And it could be a scary thing for a lot of people, especially if you don't do shadow work and you're kind of in denial about a couple of things. It's really important to know yourself as well as possible. And that's what these cards are for. They're not going to specifically tell you the future, or I wouldn't take them as gospel, if you will, but I will see them as a sort of guide, because you're going to touch down on the topics that you might be holding subconsciously and not seeing that's right in front of you. So these cards can uncover a lot for your situation or whatever question you're asking. It's a very subconscious thing that we're working with. It's like interpreting dreams almost, but it also does depend on the context that you pull this card in. So just keep in mind of the overall themes of the moon, and don't get nervous if you pull a reversal. The one that I pulled was right side up, but I just wanted to clarify that because I know that a lot of people get scared about those things. But that is it for the tarot card. I'm going to send it over to Sarah for the crystal of the week.
So I totally agree with people getting nervous about having a reversal or a card that's quote unquote deemed as bad vibes or bad energy. So we have to work on getting through those emotions. But anyway, today's crystal of the week is green aventurine, sorry, not adventure, AVEN, aventurine. So it's known as the good luck crystal, and it's on incredibly positive plane of existence. It's going to attract a lot of abundance. It has a really soothing energy, and it can help bring intense emotional healing. It can also tilt your mind into a more positive headspace. It's also going to bring decisive actions, strong leadership qualities, and encourage you to keep going no matter what. So if you ever have like a mental block, or you're feeling like, wow, I feel super stuck, or I feel like I have a lot of issues going on and nothing is going my way, green aventurine is going to be your best friend. It's also going to give you space to heal your old wounds and help you overcome old patterns. This is going to be a really good stone for an Aries and a Leo. Aries is going to help you rein in that fire and passion and turn it into a good flow and allow you to take a really gentle or tactful approach to diffusing a situation. And for a Leo, it's going to help like stop the behaviors of worrying what people think about you, and it's going to help divert that energy into a more rewarding place. If we're trying to cleanse green aventurine, we can use running water, plants, or nature. Because it's a really pretty green stone, your best case scenario is to put it somewhere around plants or outside in the grass. Obviously, if you're going to put it outside, please make sure you keep an eye on it so that way no animals take it, because that could be harmful to animals and the environment. Or we can use sunlight. So now we get into the chemical makeup. This is another silicon dioxide crystal, but whenever we add some mica, hematite, or goethite, it's going to change the color of it. So mica is going to give it that green look to it. Hematite, as we know, is going to be that irony, red, coppery look. And goethite is going to be a blue or a gray type of color. So each color is going to be found in different places. Specifically, the green aventurine is going to be found in India, Brazil, Russia, China, and the US. And Mickey, guess where it's found? I'm going to tell you, in the mines. So it's going to form from igneous or metamorphic rocks with that heat and pressure and the extra chemical components combining to give it that pretty look. I actually have green aventurine in I call it my game room, but it's like my everything room that I don't sleep in. It is a really calming and pretty stone. It's super smooth and it has really cool patterning around it too. So you're not gonna see like a straight up just green, you can. It's not gonna be like an all the time thing. Mine has rings around it. I really like it. I've had it for, I want to say 7 months now. And whenever I'm in that space, it definitely feels calming. And I feel like I've overcome a lot of my old bad habits or patterns. Have you used it yet?
I've used adventuring, right? I know I
AV.
always, yeah, I always,
Aventurine, yeah.
aventuring, I always pronounce it wrong, but I usually use it in money magic or financial gains magic. I know that if you put a piece of it in your wallet, you can attract prosperity and money into your wallet. And it's a good like stone, like if I'm going out and doing something, if we're going on like a hike or something like that, I'll carry one on me.
Thank you guys for listening. Let us know in the comments how you used the crystal we showcased today, and if there are any you would like us to talk about in the future. Thank you for coming to our garden.